The Ontario Superior Court has just granted an injunction to clear the demonstration. It will take effect at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens is here. Mr. Mayor, you sought this injunction. You were granted it by the judge. What's your reaction to this news?
Well, we're obviously very, very pleased. It'll be the court is resuming at about 5:15 just to sort out the details, but the injunction will take effect at 7 o'clock tonight. I'm hopeful that the vast majority of the protesters appreciate the rule of law, appreciate that the court has agreed to grant this injunctive relief, and decide to voluntarily move on. We don't want anyone to get hurt. We don't want anyone to get arrested. They've made their point, move on. But if they fail to move on, police will have capabilities to move in and help them move out.
Do you expect they will leave? You've heard the rhetoric that we've heard, that they say they're not going anywhere no matter who tells them they have to go.
Yeah, listen, I am concerned about it. We don't see many protests where people come out and outwardly say that this is a cause that they're willing to die for. And so we've seen incidents of violence on site already, or potential violence, concerning incidents. And certainly police will be ready. We've got lots of resources here from the OPP, from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, our own municipal force. We've got other services who've sent down public order units. So we've got a lot of boots on the ground. Hopefully they aren't needed. Hopefully people realize that the court just granted an injunction and they move on peacefully. But if they don't, we're prepared to move in and take what action is necessary.
Okay, so this comes into effect at 7 p.m., so under 2 hours from now. I mean, do you expect enforcement to start right away? And do you have the police resources you need to enforce it if it does start at 7 o'clock sharp?
Well, I'm not sure what the police will do in terms of timing. That will be their operational decision, but I can assure you that we do have the resources on the ground. The chief has assured me of that she's very comfortable with the resources that are here, and they're prepared to do what's required in order to enforce this injunction and have the protesters move out of the way of the busiest border crossing between our two nations that carries about $400 million of goods back and forth each and every day.
About how many police officers have been sent as reinforcements there, sir? I know there was a request for the OPP to help and for the RCMP, and those requests were met. Can you give us a sense of just how large the police presence is in your city right now? I cannot, and that is for operational reasons, but I can tell you that there are more than enough folks here to handle the size of this demonstration. More are available to us if required. And everyone from the Prime Minister, the Premier, and everyone on down understands the importance of this international trade route and the importance of getting it open. When you look at the crowd that is there by the bridge, I mean, how big would you say the actual protest is at its peak in terms of how big of an occupying protest police might have to deal with at 7 o'clock?
You know, at any given time, you can see about 200 people that are on site, about 75 to 100 vehicles. And so police have all of the information. They've done the analysis. There's drones in the air. There's boots on the ground. There's conversations back and forth with the protesters. Police continue to try and negotiate to have them move out voluntarily. And that is the hope here, David. We don't want anyone to get hurt. This is not really a cause worth dying for. At the end of the day, we want people to move out. You've made your point. We understand what it is. I think somewhat understand what it is some folks are fighting for. But at the end of the day, this commercial corridor is so vital to our national economic interests. It cannot be allowed to be closed any longer.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder what concerns you have about the safety issues there. I know one of the challenges police are facing here in Ottawa is that of the 400 or so trucks that are in the downtown, police say maybe 100 of them have children staying in them for chunks of time or even living in them outright. I've seen pictures of young kids, you know, at this protest at the border crossing in your city. I mean, how significant is that presence and how much of a concern is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it is disheartening. And I've seen that same photo. It was like the kids must have been bussed in and told to hold hands crossing the road or to sort of move across the road in a chain-like fashion, holding hands to get a photo op. And it's disturbing to see that. There are some kids here. We've seen pictures of people playing hockey in the streets. But I think by and large, we don't have the same problem, at least not to the magnitude you do in Ottawa with respect to kids living in truck cabs and things like that. But police are aware of what's going on. They have those numbers, and they will deal very tactfully with these folks, trying to get them to move out voluntarily. And if not, we start towing and moving folks out.
The Prime Minister, when he spoke earlier today, said that he couldn't say how or when this whole thing ends, not just Windsor, but really the movement we've seen across the country. But he says there are real concerns about violence.
I mean, what's your sense of the mood at the Ambassador Bridge blockade? How much of a concern is violence in your view?
Well, it is a concern. I have to acknowledge that. And again, people have said that they're here. They're extremely passionate. In some cases, pretty much every night, they're well fueled by alcohol and drugs. And they have outwardly said that they are willing to die for this cause. And so at the end of the day, that requires a different type of response from police. They are the public order units that are here are very used to dealing with this type of protest, whether it be a G7 or G20 protest. They're used to these types of demonstrators, and they will be working with all of the training that they've received to try and end this peacefully and have folks move on. But if not, it'll come to the point where cars have to be towed and people have to be arrested. And I'm sorry that it's come to that, but we can no longer afford to have this vital economic pipeline shut down that links the United States and Canada.
So you've been granted the injunction by the courts. Also today, Premier Doug Ford declared a state of emergency. How does that decision by the provincial government, how does that affect your ability to sort of regain control of the situation in the city?
Yeah, you know why I think that's helpful, David? I see that as a good tool to alleviate the fear that we had, which is if you moved in and you flushed out 200 people that are blocking the street today, that 400 more show up tomorrow. And the penalties that the Premier talked about today after he declared the state of emergency are significant. And there are very few people in this country that could afford to suffer the type of penalty that was being mentioned today, up to and including truck drivers losing their commercial vehicles operating license. And so folks will have to be, it will be the most committed of the committed who are going to hang in there and stand losing the ticket for their livelihood to protest this particular point. Listen, at the end of the day, this has been a tough 2 years for everyone. No one has enjoyed the COVID experience and all the restrictions and the lockdown, myself included. But we have to move on. We see things getting better across the country. We see restrictions loosening here in Ontario. And so there is a bright light on the horizon. We're almost there. Let's get through this together and end these protests peacefully so we can get business back to normal and put bread on the tables of the families who are suffering so much here.
The injunction, though, sir, as I understand it, is only for the Ambassador Bridge, right? There's other things like the tunnel, for example, that could be targeted. With the state of emergency powers, would that help you if something should move there or spring up there, for instance?
Well, I think they would, because the Premier is talking about moving protest into different public spaces. And so that is an important distinction. But at the end of the day, the tunnel traffic has continued to flow. All of the essential workers, the healthcare workers, since the closure of the Ambassador Bridge have moved to the tunnel, been able to get across to Detroit. But the tunnel can't carry, by and large, it can't carry commercial traffic. Maybe a couple auto haulers, but 99% of the traffic through the tunnel is really passenger vehicles in a downtown to downtown connection between Windsor and Detroit.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your time.
Have a nice weekend.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.